He goes, do you write baseball? I played baseball. I never wrote it, but the answer was yes. And from there, every time they ask me something, can you do rookies for football? Right? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. And now eventually I can write the stuff I want to write.
Two's fun, man. Like my son's 2.5 now, and like, you know, they start talking a little bit, and like they're like they don't like talk back and stuff, and they're not, you know, my daughter's great. Like she's you know, super kind girl, and like isn't like in those teenage years, like attitude wise, you know. But I'm preparing myself for those years, you know.
They're coming. They're coming. Yeah. I mean, with a 2-year-old, it's like they can do so many things like a normal person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they cannot take care of themselves in any way.
That's right.
Not what's it like. There's no such thing as like, oh, go put your shoes on, or even like put that away or do anything. Like you're still directing the show.
Yes.
They can improvise a little bit. But yeah.
I do think that 2 to 3 is the year and the age where your patience is tested so much, where like my son, for instance, like really like needs to do everything himself. Like you tell him like, hey, come over here, I got to change your diaper, get you changed, get you ready for school today. And he'll be like, no, I do it. You know, like he's got to be the one to do it. And I'm like, bro, we don't have that much time. You can't just wait for you to do it. It's not that easy.
Especially guys like us, where it's like we spend so much time like trying to hammer things down to what's rational and what's not. Like our job is like, let's be rational here. And then you have a daughter who's just like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you like strawberries. Like I know for a fact you love strawberries. So don't tell me today the answer is no.
Yes.
Right? Like
man, nothing worse than making dinner and them saying that's what they want to eat. Like, what do you want for breakfast? Oh, I want some yogurt. All right, here's some yogurt. You know, I'm not even, you know, sitting and making dinner or, you know, making breakfast in that case, but like I'll open a brand new yogurt for you. And then you're like, I don't want yogurt. You told me 3 minutes ago that you wanted yogurt.
Like you said.
You literally told me that you wanted yogurt.
I'm gonna be tested, man, because that's the irrational behaviors just across the board.
Yes.
Always. Those always drive me nuts when somebody does something. I'm like, dude, just use your noggin. And it's hard for me to come to terms with the fact that these noggins just don't work right. They don't.
You gotta just you know, respect the process and trust the process.
That's
you
right,
know,
dude.
that's just what it comes down to. But man, I'm so pumped to have you on Perspectives. You know, I asked this to guests who hop on to just like talk about your journey in the space and how you got to where you are, so people can get introduced to you, you know, as a person and analyst. And yours is interesting. Yours is very interesting. You know, coming from a lot of your stuff stemming from Reddit, right?
Right. Yeah. So when I say that, I mean it. Like I'm just a comment guy. Originally was a guy that just threw out comments starting like a decade ago, just commenting on posts, giving my thoughts. And eventually people were like, oh, this is good information. It should be its own post. So then I would go and create my own post, you know, just posting basically articles for free, nuanced takes, whatever. And eventually I met somebody in the industry and I showed them, I was like, oh yeah, I do some stuff over here for fun. And they were like, oh, that should be on a website. And they set me up writing for free. I was just writing for free for somebody else's website that I posted on Reddit. I was kind of grandfathered in at Reddit because I had been there for so long. So I just told them like, this is some site. And then eventually from there, I actually had, they asked me, John and Pemba, who I met in the industry, he goes, do you write baseball? Because they had an opportunity there. I played baseball. I never wrote it. I didn't even go on Reddit or whatever, but the answer was yes. And from there, every time they asked me something, can you do rookies for football? Right? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. And now eventually I can write the stuff I want to write, but it's a grind in this industry to get to a spot where you can do the things you want, because there's so many things out there that need to be done.
Yeah. So how are you like what is the day to day for you now? When you're waking up and doing the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So for me, I do a ton of different stuff for us in terms of like the articles, the videos, the podcast. Now I'm doing the Sirius XM show. Right. But my day always starts with waking up with my daughter at 9 o'clock. I pass her off, and that's when I go in and I almost always start my day researching, writing something. Right. At 1 o'clock, I try and schedule all my 1 o'clock and beyond. I try and schedule all my shows and all that stuff. But I always try and research and write in the morning. And then from there, it's showtime. You know, we do my wife loves that our Sirius XM show when I'm on 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays and Fridays, right? That's a good, nice time slot for the for pretty much canceling everything. And then the season starts and our show is on Sunday morning on Sirius XM.
Oh,
so
great.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, well, I can't do anything on Thursday night, Friday night, or Saturday night.
Right.
I can't go away for a weekend ever. So you tell me if you can work around those plans, right?
Yeah. Do you think so? With you having started at Reddit, and like I'm relatively active on Reddit, not like to the degree of like hopping on there daily and stuff like that, but like, if they post something of mine or they're talking about something that I had done, like I want to have conversation about it. Do you think that Reddit just kind of gets a bad rep in the industry in general? And why do you think that is? And why do you think it's probably? I mean, I would assume you think it's wrong.
I've come up, so not necessarily wrong, but I understand why analysts and like especially people that are kind of known wouldn't like it as much. And I've come up with an analogy for it.
Okay.
Well, let's say you're name a band you like or any band. It's kind of
let's go with Coldplay.
Coldplay. Oh, good. No, something completely irrelevant right now. So say you're Coldplay, right? And you have a Coldplay concert. That's going to invite your fans to come to that concert. CEOs and potentially their HR people and stuff like that. So like you have your fans are coming to your concert. That's Twitter, right? That's Twitter because even though people will find your stuff when it gets to a higher level, initially the people that follow you are rooting for you. They want you. They want your content. They want your stuff. They're there for you. Reddit is more like a music festival where it's like there's a bunch of stuff on there. Nobody's there specifically to see you for the most part. There might be somebody, but you're Coldplay and you're showing up. And if your stuff's not good and it's got illogical stuff and fallacies, then people are going to come in and they're not going to like it. And there's a downvote button over there, right? Like at your concert, you're kicking people out, whatever, on Twitter. You can block people, you can mute people. Over there, they got the downvote button. It's a different beast. You're not playing to your people. And that's why a lot of people who are used to Twitter and used to having their followers being like, right on, dude, you're the GOAT.
Yeah.
You go over there and people might be like, who is this guy?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think that on Twitter, there's a more intentional interaction that goes on because they're adding you, right? Or they're responding to something that you're saying, right? And so like oftentimes, it's hard for me on Twitter to take feedback either way, really, because on one side, of course, I appreciate and I'm grateful for like the really favorable comments and stuff. And I, will tell them that I appreciate it and all that kind of stuff. But you're also like, that's your direct line to tell me that, right? Because you know that I'll be checking Twitter. And then the people who say negative things are doing it and they're adding me because they know that I'm going to see it. And they're likely trying to get under my skin just as much as they're providing like actual constructive feedback, right? And so the thing that I've always said on these shows is that I love going on Reddit and seeing what people are saying about my content because it's free critique. It's people who are not necessarily trying to get under. And now maybe that people know that I'm doing that, they will try to get under my skin and stuff because they know that I'll like find it or something like that. But like, I just genuinely like, I've taken stuff that people have said on Reddit about my podcast, about an article that I've written or what have you. And I've changed things based on what people have said, and like when you get sort of that like more objective feedback, even if it's stemming from someone who, might be more negative and mean on the internet, like it's still something. There's probably still a little bit of truth there. And at the end of the day, man, I found that like when you jump in and just have general conversation on there, I don't really think it's any different than the general conversation you have on Twitter or something.
Not to mention, the trolls can be taken care of by other people there as well. Because like the thing about Twitter is when you block people, you're just kind of hiding them. You're not really exposing them. On Reddit, when people come in and the comments start coming in, the good ones and the funny ones usually make it to the top.
Right.
The people who are being just flat out rude and annoying, you can actually downvote them to the bottom. There's on Twitter, it's like that stuff comes in, and even though 150 people might hate it, if 5 people like it, it has 5 likes.
Yeah.
Right. Like on Twitter, if 150 people hate it and 5 people like it, it has negative 45. You know what I mean?
Right.
Negative 145. Like you were just buried, right? And it just makes it easier to get to the quality stuff and see the quality stuff at top. So it's a different beast. And again, there's definitely an extra layer of anonymity to it. There's definitely an animosity for anything that's paywalled, and that, towards analysts as well a little bit. So there's definitely downsides to it. But I would say the big upside is for anybody that wants to start creating content and get in the space. I'll say this: where else can you go and write a huge thing, do your research, and you can actually do formatting and thing over the stuff over there and post it and guarantee that someone will read it and give you feedback. I mean, I go in there and I read stuff all the time and I say, hey, this is great. Or I pop in and say, hey, I disagree. I mean, when I first started, the feedback I was getting was like, dude, you're using too many commas. Right. And I was like, you know what? I actually got to get better at writing. I got to get better. Like people saying like, oh, too long, didn't read. That's a real thing. Like, I know it's a joke to say that, but like Mark Twain used to say, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. Like I learned how to take out not only things that are just too long and too cumbersome, but also like if I have like 8 points on a player, just based on the debates I've gotten into on Reddit, when people go and pick holes, they don't pick your top 6 arguments. They pick your weakest ones.
Good point.
And you go, so I go in now, I ask myself, I'm like, where am I falling for a fallacy, or where am I creating a fallacy? Like, am I creating like a false choice between two players that doesn't exist? And if I'm doing that, I'll take it out. And then by the end of the day, I have a more tight product that's harder to poke holes into, and it's also easier to digest. Like that's something that Reddit gives me. Whereas like definitely our members on our website, as much as I love them and stuff, they very rarely come to me and say, hey, you know what? Like, I didn't like your argument here. So you get that and you need it. Yeah.
Shout out Reddit, man. Reddit, shout out that subreddit. They're doing their thing each and every day. All right, let's look into some fantasy analysis here. You've sort of become the tight end dude. Like you've analyzed tight ends super, super deeply. That's sort of how you, in my eyes, it was a way for you to like really stand out and differentiate yourself, I think, in the space, and then kind of branch out from there. But what do you think people, if I were to just give you like a high level question, what do you think people have gotten wrong most with the tight end position through the years?
Yeah. And that's actually how I kind of got into it, is that there's one thing, and this is divisive because people kind of hate it, especially the dynasty people. Dynasty people hate the idea that opportunity matters so much more for tight end than other positions. It truly does. Like at wide receiver, it's great when it comes to talent because every team is putting 2-3 wide receivers on the field for the vast majority of their snaps, and the talent wins out, right? Every time the most talented guy gets the ball more. And pass, like wide receivers, when you just group everyone together as pass catchers, wide receivers are better pass catchers in most cases than tight ends. Yeah. So it's like, it's just so much easier to say this guy's the most talented, he's going to get the ball. Whereas with tight end, scheme comes into play, opportunity comes into play. Obviously, the talent of the wide receivers around them come into play, and people don't like to hear that. They like this notion that the best players are going to be the best, versus this idea of like, we need to find the convergence of scheme and talent and opportunity, and then lean into that in redraft. In dynasty at tight end, you just got to draft the talented guys and sit tight and wait for that window to open. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But like that's what you run into there with dynasty, and that's the way it is. But which dynasty in some ways is a lot easier because, hey, I like this guy, I'm going to grab him, I'm going to hold on to him. But in redraft, you really got to lean into opportunity. I think a lot of people sit back and they lean too much into, I think this player is good, or I think this quarterback is good, so I'm just going to draft anybody that plays with him. And I think that can be a mistake for people at times.
You know what? This kind of plays into that. But I remember, I don't think it was last year. I think it was a couple years ago. When it came to rookie tight ends, and there was a big discussion about, rookie tight ends being bad picks just based on history, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember this is the year that Laporta came. So it was a couple years ago. And I ended up writing up Laporta. And this is obviously like, it sounds like a humble brag, but I wrote him up as a late round target in the draft guide. And the main reason that, and the driving force for that, is exactly what you're saying, in that if you look historically at rookie tight ends who actually did just run routes, who actually did just like get out there and do things, whether it was Kyle Pitts or Jordan Reed or whomever, those were the dudes who were good in fantasy football. Like it's that. So like you can sit there and say like, hey, rookies are not going to get those opportunities nearly as much, which I think is probably fair. But if you feel if you get the coach speak and you feel conviction about the player and all that kind of stuff, you can see all that converge and say, oh yeah, like you could see a Sam Laporta in that instance, emerge and be something, or Brock Bowers last year, or insert rookie tight end here, if all of those things really come together. But like, it's just, it's so true that at the end of the day, fantasy football comes down to it's a volume driven game. And I do think oftentimes we lose sight of that at tight end because there is such a wide variety of deployment at the position across teams.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm so glad that Adam Gase is gone, because that dude, like, he would just have his tight end block on 20% of the pass plays, no matter who it was. You know what I mean? And like, historically speaking, you go through your example, tight ends that block on 15% or more of their pass plays. I've only seen 3 of them finish top 5 in fantasy football. And we're talking going back a full decade plus. And that's George Kittle one time, Rob Gronkowski in a year that he actually caught 10 touchdowns and got hurt after 10 games. And then the other one was Julius Thomas in an Adam Gase offense where Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdowns.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So a shopping cart could have scored double-digit touchdowns just with a good push, right? So like, but for the most part, like, we need our guys out there running the routes, like you said, not just on the field. That's the part that gets so annoying for people, is that like, you take somebody like Tyler Higbee in his early career, he was out there a ton, but he's blocking on 20% of his pass plays. He might as well not even be out there. So like, it's this whole idea of like, you got to find, especially for rookie tight ends, you need to find a team that's willing to draft this guy to be their top pass catching tight end, which, an example of Trey McBride, good player. They just happen to have another guy that only catches passes. Right. You're never going to put Zach Ertz in the dirt, right? It's going to be Ertz out wide and the other guy in line. And then on top of that, he needs to be a top 2 target on the team. You can't have 2 high-end incumbent wide receivers because he needs to get those targets on top of that. Like, you put anybody, I'm talking pretty much anybody behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and we're going to have to move them down because it's so difficult to get 3 guys on the same team, all of them 100 targets without somebody getting hurt. So it really is this game of opportunity, and it helps to have the talent, no question.
So with all that in mind, who do you look at this year at tight end and think they're super overvalued? And are you, do you lean elite tight end too? Like, that's another question I should throw out there with with all of this in mind.
So I usually don't, when we're talking elite, meaning like the first couple off the board, I usually don't. And I want to give a shout out to Ryan Heath, who's done some great work on this, like actually like visualizing the data on this. But, and again, this gets into a deeper discussion on positional scarcity, which then now you're getting into format, right? Because like in a 10 team, I try to tell people, like, if you're in a 10 team league with 2 wide receiver spots and 1 flex spot, well, now positional scarcity, now we probably will go out and draft Brock Bowers because I think I can fill those spots easier. But in the what's becoming more commonplace, which is like the 3 wide receivers and a flex, or even the super flexes and things like that, I typically don't go for those top guys. And I think positional scarcity can be overblown at times when you consider that you still need to hit on the other positions. Right? Like, you can't I can't just go against you this week, JJ, and score 20 points less than you, but say, oh, well, positional scarcity. So I actually beat you. You actually still need to score those points. Like the best ever PPR season for a tight end is Rob Gronkowski. He scored 330 fantasy points, which is awesome. It's incredible. But guys like CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase and some of these running backs are scoring 400. Like, you still got to fill in the other spots there. So for me, I'm not going to say that Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are overvalued because I think they're the best of the position. I would go and say that guys that guys from that like top 5 or so group where I'm not sure they're even going to be a top 2 target on the team. I'm not sure the volume is going to be there. Guys like Sam Laporta and possibly TJ Hawkinson. You really have to ask yourself with those players. I hate to simplify it down to a question, but you really have to sit there and say, who gets more targets, Sam Laporta or Jameson Williams? Who gets more targets, TJ Hawkinson or Jordan Addison? And I know Addison could be suspended, but who gets more targets when it matters for me when I'm trying to win a championship? And if your answer is definitively Jameson Williams, you are betting against yourself selecting Sam Laporta as a top 4 tight end. If I'm drafting a tight end at 4, it's because I think he could be 1.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not really grabbing those guys.
Yeah, no, I look, all my research points to the same stuff. When you look at like how top 6 tight ends and how they perform against ADP expectation and stuff. I mean, if you look at their previous season peripherals and some of the numbers that they had in that N-1 year, typically the guys who end up busting are the ones who didn't have strong yards per route run rates and didn't have good target per, that kind of stuff. And like, we didn't see that from, a Laporta last year, a Kelsey. Obviously, Kelsey took a big step back last year. Like, we didn't see that from them. And to your point, like a lot of my research has pointed to that when there are tight ends who have top wide receivers on their team, multiple, and they're the third player, if you will, pass catcher being drafted from their team, that's not a good sign. You want 1 or 0, right? Like, that is the ideal situation, and that plays into what you're just talking about them being, one of the higher players on their team from a target share standpoint.
And yeah, I'll add this for Brock Bowers. If he comes out and hits me, because the thing is, Brock Bowers last year, he was, if you just take all the flex players in points per game, he was like flex player 35. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you do have to claim positional scarcity. If he comes out this year and pulls a prime Travis Kelce and has 100 receptions and 1,300, 1,400 yards and touchdowns are fluky, but Kelsey's one of the few guys that has multiple seasons with double-digit touchdowns. Like, if he does that, I'll be happy to draft him in the first and second rounds at that point. But like, I need to know Kelsey's per Ryan Heath's his research. Kelsey is the only guy in modern times that's been drafted in the first 4 rounds as a tight end and actually delivered. And you got to go back to like Gronk and Jimmy Graham to find other examples. So like, if I can be confident in saying this is the guy, he's going to be the guy for a long time, I'll go there. After one season, I'm just not there yet. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, I ranted about this on the Late Round Fantasy Football show that actually happened right before we started recording this. And this is kind of a mini rant, but I think that it's an important thing to throw out there because it was research that I did for the draft guide this year. So basically, like, the way that I look at, and this is kind of deep, so hopefully, like, as I explain this, it makes sense. And I'd love to hear your reaction of it too. To me, it's all about opportunity cost. It's all about the fact that when you get this guy, you're not getting these guys, right? So at every spot in the draft, some player at their position has an expected PPR points per game average or number that they're expected to get, right? And if you look at where the tight end 1 historically has been drafted, the tight end 2 where they've historically been drafted, and you look at them compared to a baseline player to calculate expected VORP, right? So baseline player in this case, let's just say tight end 12, and then you do the same thing at running back and wide receiver at that same area of the draft. Tight ends look better in VORP, okay, versus the RB9, I think it is, that's close to that tight end 1 in ADP, or the wide receiver, I don't know, 11 or whatever it is, or 7 or something. So basically what I'm saying is, like, on paper, from a value over replacement player perspective, this is what people look at and they say, I'm going to get a tight end because this tight end is giving me X number of points in expectation more than that baseline tight end. But because baseline tight ends get drafted later, when you divide that number by the number of picks that it takes to get to that baseline tight end, you start to see that there's a much larger opportunity cost involved when you draft that tight end instead of the running back and the wide receiver, because the running back and the wide receiver, the baseline is getting drafted in round 5, round 6 versus round 11, round 12, right? So that advantage that you think that you're getting at tight end is actually not nearly as great. It's actually worse because of how far it stretches across rounds at the end of the day. So like, there are instances where going elite tight end makes plenty of sense. Like when you're in a 10-team league, or if you're in, a not, home leagues and stuff where people maybe aren't as sharp and it's more casual, then you can win that position and you know that you can fill running back and wide receiver more easily. But I'm always shocked. Like, for instance, like we go to the Expo, right? And I'm in the Kings Classic and I'm sitting there and I'm drafting in this full PPR format. There's 1 tight end slot. There's 3 wide receiver slots and there's 3 flex spots where we know tight ends are not going to be winning the flex, right? And so I'm sitting there and people are like taking, and hopefully I'm not exposing too much because I want to win. I won last year. I want to repeat this thing, right? And so, but like people are drafting tight ends in their normal ADP spots, but there's more flex spots than normal. Right. You should be going after wide receivers and running backs more. Exactly.
And when you look at Brock Bowers versus the tight ends 10, 11, 12, just looking at the raw information in terms of points per game, you're getting 5 more points per game, which is what people point to with the positional scarcity, right? Exactly. You look at kicker or something, it's like 2, that's why kicker you weigh, right? But like if you actually go and look at a multi-flex league like that, or even just one flex, look at how many more points Jamar Chase scored on a per game basis than the wide receivers 3s and 4s too. I mean, we're talking 10 more points per game. When you really start boiling it all down, it doesn't make a ton of sense there. Not to mention, tight end, in my opinion, is one of the positions where you can create so much leverage because it's much easier to find value later, right? Like I went back and looked, and for 13 straight years now, a tight end has come from 18 and ADP or later to finish top 5, right? We're talking Laporta, Engram twice, going all the way back to Julius Thomas, right? Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, Logan Thomas. Like to me, it's just easier to create that. Just like you with, I know it's lateround.com now, but late round QB, right? Like that was the whole idea, is that like we can find these guys late, and you create so much leverage that way by loading up on the other positions and then circling back. It's just like zero RB. And I'll say that's one of the other positions. One of the other huge mistakes I see people making at tight end is that they punt the position, but then they never circle back to look for upside. That's what the whole yin and yang tight end thing has always been about, is that like, we're going to use this position to create leverage, but you don't just stop at the draft. Like if you ever watch somebody go 0 RB and then never actually trade or add someone off waivers, that team absolutely craters. They might survive based on wide receivers for a little while, but the whole goal is to build the most rock solid team by the end. So I saw it so many times. I see people go so heavy on running back and wide receiver, and then they never address the tight end position. They never address the quarterback position. They make the playoffs. They're on a rocket ship to 3rd place. If you come in 3rd or 4th place every year, and you're one of those people that drafts wide receiver and running back heavy, maybe this year consider investing more time on the waivers and trades at those other onesie positions. And maybe that's the reason that you haven't been able to get over the top.
Yeah. Another look, like I think that there's obviously nuance, and we're not saying like never draft elite tight ends, any of that kind of stuff. But I do think that another underrated piece about late round tight end, that also, goes a little bit, like, is just not talked about that much, is that when you're in the grind of the regular season, you got to think about where people are going to be fighting most off the waiver wire. And it's always going to be running back and wide receiver because the demand is higher. Similar to in your draft, they go earlier because the demand is higher. And so, we can sit here and say, oh yeah, late round tight ends like happen every year, and there's, guys in the top 5, but like at the same time, they are a little bit easier to acquire because people aren't attacking the position nearly as hard as they are at running back and wide receiver.
Absolutely. Not to mention, you have the additional value of like so there's a lot of tight ends that kind of have like handcuff value, like Dallas Goedert, perfect example. When someone's hurt, he's great. You know, like last year, what do you have, 170 yards in that one game that AJ Brown missed?
Yeah, the Saints, I think. Yeah.
And when Devonta Smith left mid-game, like there's that handcuff value. Trey McBride and Isaiah Likely coming out of the woodwork to help people win leagues, and that comes along a little bit later in the season than like a breakout running back week 1. You know how the scramble is early on, and the hitting and missing. We saw the rare occasion with Isaiah Likely last year where people were just like pumping money at a guy week 1, but you're right. It's almost always wide receivers and running backs, and you can just kind of slide them in there, man. So I think especially in leagues with fab, where you just, you can still bid on the running backs and then sneak the tight end on your bench for like $4. Yeah. So it really is a great position to generate leverage. And that's why it needs to be a special situation for me to sit back and advise the people that follow our strategy to say, hey, you know what? We're actually going to reach on the tight end 4 this year. It usually is more like, hey, you know what? If Trey McBride slides into the 4th or 5th round, we will take him. Or if George Kittle is sliding in the 5th round, we will take him. Otherwise, we're going to hang back. We're going to potentially draft 2, and we're going to be all over the wire, and we're going to create leverage that way.
This episode is sponsored by DraftKings. There's no better way to lock in your fantasy dominance early than with Best Ball on DraftKings, where you draft once and ride your roster all season long. And right now, DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million Best Ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another Best Ball ticket to play free for a share of that $15 million, giving you a second shot to win big. It's easy. Just draft your dream team once, no weekly management required, and let your top scorers automatically start each week. Across the whole season, every breakout star, every clutch play, every touchdown will count towards your quest for a share of $15 million. I'm drafting over there all the time. It's an absolute blast. So download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 Best Ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of that $15 million. That's 2 chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. 1 per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by 9/4/25 to get 1 bonus entry. $20 entry fee required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball. Sponsored by DK. Now back to the show. So let's talk about those guys. Who are some of your favorite sleepers this year at tight end?
Yeah, so for me, this is my favorite question because this is where I point people over to the article, What Makes an Elite Tight End at Fantasy Alarm. That is one that I wrote up for free for anybody that just details what I look for in breakout tight ends and elite tight ends. And then, my personal opinions on this year are fully in our draft guide, like everybody does, So if you want my opinion, it's there. But if you want to search for yourself, look for that. We're looking for guys that ideally are top 2 targets on the team, guys that have athleticism. If you want to figure out why some guys on 70 catches have 700 yards, like Jake Ferguson, and some guys on 70 catches have 1,000 yards, like rookie Kyle Pitts or George Kittle, it's raw speed. So I'm looking for guys that potentially can be a top 2 target on their team and potentially have that speed. So, I'll bet again on Dalton Kincaid if I'm going to spend up a little bit. But deeper guys, I look around at guys like Chiga Okonkwo. I know he's undersized, but ask yourself, after Calvin Ridley, who's the next best target on that team? And Cam Ward could go full huck-it-chuck-it football here. The criticisms of him are that he's like a Jameis Winston, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jay Cutler, hero ball guy, but that sounds pretty good to me for fantasy.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great, right? So I have no problem with going there. I look at, if you're probably the deepest guy that I'm willing to truly strongly consider would be Oronde Gadsden. Just because you look at all the, and again, we got to go down narrative street here for this.
Sure, yeah. It's an undrafted season-long player, and it's a 20th round at times best ball pick on DraftKings. So yeah,
exactly. I could just give you like the Hunter Henrys and the Tucker Crafts and stuff, but in a typical league, my main move is to take a Hunter Henry or a Tucker Craft and plan to start them, and then just take somebody completely high risk, high reward to put them on the bench, like Kincaid or Pitts or whatever. But if you're looking at deeper leagues, Oronde Gadsden. If you look at Greg Roman's history with Mark Andrews, not only did he have a top 5 all-time season with Mark Andrews, but in the early going for Mark Andrews, 2019, Nick Boyle was the inline tight end. He played 70% of the snaps. Mark Andrews actually only played 41% of the snaps that year, but he was used primarily as a full-time pass-catching tight end, basically playing slot and split end, and he finished top 5 in fantasy football. And Greg Roman orchestrated that. Not only that, but Andy Bischoff came over with Roman. He's the tight end coach over there. He was the tight end coach that converted Darren Waller from a wide receiver to a tight end. And you listen to the things he says about Oronde Gadsden, he's literally using Darren Waller's name. Whose father was a wide receiver. I know he went to Syracuse, so it's like kind of throw the tape out of the window a little bit. But 17 contested catches last year, most of any rookie tight end. So that's a name where it's like, if he comes out and gets a good route if he gets any sort of role as part of the pass game, it's something to consider because, we don't know who the guy after Lab McConkey is going to be either. So that's probably the deepest I'm willing to go with the sleepers.
Yeah, I love that call out. I was looking at my prospect model right now as you were talking, just to see where things sort of lined up with Gadsden. And he looks pretty good for where he was drafted for sure. And he had really good. So career yards per out run is one of the inputs, one of the main production inputs. And it's getting more and more difficult to model tight ends, rookie tight ends, just because we know athleticism matters so much more there. And we're not getting numbers from these guys like we used to. And it's very frustrating.
Cowards. Jay,
yeah, right.
Shout out Terrence Ferguson for showing up.
That's what I'm saying. That's one of the reasons why I went to bat in Dynasty for Terrence Ferguson, is because we knew, right? We knew that he was athletic and we felt good about that. Like if Elijah Arroyo would have come out and run, he could have been a baller from we could have felt really great about him, but we just don't know. Whereas at least with Terrence Ferguson, I'm not saying Ferguson is going to be a this year guy. I think he's probably more 2026 plus guy, but regardless, it sucks that we're not getting that data nearly as much. But Gadsden at least has arguably, one of the best production profiles out there. So there's at least that going for him too.
Yeah, I'll say this, again, Arroyo, I know our friend Theo Greminger always likes to point to that on-field speed that Arroyo had on that one play, that seam play that everyone's seen where he's just off to the house. But yeah, we need that data because it truly is. The last time a tight end that ran a 4.8 or slower finished top 5 in fantasy was Heath Miller.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you need to be able to outrun the linebackers and safeties.
Yeah.
That's it,
And we can obviously make assumptions and watch and all that kind of stuff, but like it's just nice to have the data point there that we can point to.
Yeah, I'll say this on Oronde Gadsden. If you out there are a fan of Harold Fannin, then you should be a fan of Oronde Gadsden because it's like they have a similar profile and their path to success is going to be the same. You need somebody that's willing to just play in that wide receiver essentially and make them the big slot and use them like Evan Engram. And Greg Roman has a history of doing that. That's if it was up to me, I would just bring back Doug Peterson and Chan Gailey.
Sure.
And we would just, every team would use the big slot, but it's, you gotta lean into what you're given.
Yeah. I love that call out. All right. Let me ask you this. When we look back at this season, okay, so we've already talked about like late round tight end and stuff and whether you want to go early or not, but just overarching, not just a tight end, what strategy do you think will look best when it's January 2026?
Yeah, just leaning into kind of all we've talked about and my thought process and how I feel about the teams I've already drafted. Like I truly think that using your first 4 or 5 straight picks on running back and wide receiver, any combination really that you want to, but maybe even leaning a little more into, and I'm usually like a robust RB guy, like just get them and go with it. But maybe leaning to a little more into wide receiver this year, given how heavy running backs are going early. But I truly think that you're better off fading both quarterback and tight end to some degree, and then trying to put those together later on. I will in the 5th round, I think is where I'll start considering like a George Kittle or a Jalen Hurts if they're still floating around there. Yeah. But yeah, I really truly think that this is. It's going to be a year where you're going to want to lean into RB and wide receiver early for sure. I mean, for you with the early going, do you think that it makes a little more sense to go? Like, do you think we're bouncing back more towards wide receiver given how healthy running backs were? I know I read your email blast that went out on Saquon Barkley and all the guys that get a ton of. I mean, it's eye opening. It makes so much sense that people think that the only way to regress is injury. And you made such a good point that it's like the way to regress is actually just normal regression.
Yeah, it's just how this goes. Like, yeah, exactly I think that we just love to attach narratives to things to make things seem like they make more sense. But I think what makes sense in my mind for a guy like Saquon or whoever had a lot of carries the previous year is just, hey, it's really hard to carry the ball 300 plus times in the season, not just because you probably ran pure from an injury perspective. Yes. But also like the Eagles are the 2nd lowest pass rate of any team since 2011 last year. Like that's not, they have a tough schedule this year. And just in general, like when we talk about regression, you got to think that other things are going to go down that are completely unpredictable and unforeseen, whether it's injuries to other players or the offensive line or the defense, like playing poorly, or like, this deep ball just doesn't hit, or like those kinds of things. And that's why I always go to golf whenever I give analogies about regression, because everyone, so many people play. All of us are pretty bad. I don't think Scotty Scheffler's listening to this podcast.
Shout out Scotty if you are, though.
Shout out Scotty. But like we all intuitively can understand, like there are times, like if I'm like a low 90s golfer, right? There are times where I'll go out, I'll shoot like an 85 and I'm like, wow, I had a great day. Did I do anything different? No, I hit a drive that hit a tree and just landed back in the fairway, like just stuff like that goes down and happens. Similar if you exercise, if you go for a run and one day you just feel it because you got better sleep or something. Like there's just so many literally like thousands of factors that go into what regression is. And I think a lot of people are just like, oh no, a lot of carries this year means that they're going to get injured the next year. It doesn't have to be injury. It could be partially injury, but like, I don't think we can just simply say that's the reason that happened. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And the people, like some people on the complete opposite side will go out and say, well, JJ shot an 85 yesterday. So today he will shoot an 85 unless he blows his knee out. You know what I mean? Whereas the reality is that next year you might just go back to a normal year where, there's certain players. again, for me, it affects when I go through that list, like certain guys, if I don't love the talent and everything lined up perfectly for success, like potentially guys like Kyron Williams, those are the ones that kind of scare me the most. Where it's like, it's like, wow, things went perfectly for a guy that I don't think is, and statistically, he's not really a world beater on that front either. Yep. It's like you look back at it and say, man, am I going to make that bet again on something that I didn't even really like betting on? So yeah, I'm fully with you on that. I think there's, it's so hard to fade Saquon. Like I can't do it past, I don't know, 5 or 6.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, and that's why I wanted to put that together to say, like, this isn't about fading a player because you're predicting injury. This is about just looking at the realistic range of outcomes that's going to happen for a guy. That's like, chances are he'll lose 2 to 3 to 4 attempts per game. Like that's what we've seen historically, like 2 to 3 attempts per game, and that could be significant, or that like you can judge, at the end of the day. But yeah, man, I think the regression piece is something that always just goes, and I know we've kind of gotten off topic with it, but like
whatever,
it's probably yeah, exactly. This is what Perspectives is for, baby. Just doing whatever we want.
This is what's important, dude. I mean, this is important stuff.
Right. Like regression to me is the single most important thing in fantasy football for people to sort of grasp, because a lot of times we make the assumption that things will just go the same way. And I think an example of that this year could be, and again, I think in range of outcomes, but I'm definitely lower than the market, but could be with like Chuba Hubbard, where last year, and it's fine if people like Chuba, I understand the upside case for Chuba Hubbard. Trust me, they have a good offensive line, like the offense is ascending, all of that. But if you look at volume, just straight up volume, Kyron's probably the better example, but you look at just straight up volume and you ask yourself, can this be sustained? And the answer to that 25% of the time might be yes. But if 75% of the time in these like mind simulations that you're doing is no, then that means that you should maybe bump it down a little bit. And then you think about like the receiving angle and them adding receiving backs to that back. And you just have to think about like, how did this situation change? And is this actually sustainable? Maybe a better example actually is Jerry Jeudy, where I haven't been in on Jerry Jeudy, and I feel like I'm kind of on an island with it. But Judy's numbers last year, like his per route run numbers, his efficiency marks, they were not any better than what we typically see from Jeudy. What was different with Jeudy last year? Well, he had Jameis for a period of time. There was no other pass catchers. Cedric Tillman gets hurt. And if you look at his splits with and without Jameis, massively different. With and without Cedric Tillman, massively different. And then if you look at his per route run numbers, they've been the same. Nothing changed there. Cleveland just ran more, like he ran more routes in Cleveland last year. And then I asked myself, okay, is that sustainable? Can that so like, I'm just asking questions at the end of the day to see like, can this be repeated? And oftentimes when something crazy happens the previous year where we're like, whoa, this year 5 breakout for Jerry Jeudy just happened. That came out of nowhere. Maybe there's a reason for it. It was kind of wild,
They don't want you asking those questions, dude.
Yeah,
like
right.
the FBI, once you start asking those, especially if somebody wins a league with a player like that, then they don't want you asking that. But you're right. And my biggest concern for this Cleveland Browns team is that what have we seen for the last, forever from this team when they have like a bunch of different quarterbacks and no real starting quarterback, is that they go out there and they start the best guy. And then when that guy inevitably fails, which this team has a 4.5 over under with most sports books, 4.5 win total, right? Yeah. What do? They open up the clown car. And that happens at the worst possible time for you in fantasy football. It's like, right? Like last year, Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Bailey Zappi come out. Like, what do you think is going to happen when Joe Flacco gets to the point of the season when he's 3-11?
It's scary. There's at the very least, Coop, there's variance to that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing, is that like we don't have to say like, oh, it's definitely going to happen at this. It's just, we know there's a lot more volatility to that as opposed to another wideout in the same exact range that has a really stud quarterback that you feel good about. It's just, that's it,
Exactly. And again, football, and again, now that you're a best ball bro with us, you understand that the season is not created equally throughout, right? Those last 3 games, what I mean? It's, that's where the money's made. So, especially in situations like that where I'm like, okay, things could be incredible with Flacco, but when Dylan Gabriel gets his 1 game and then Shedeur gets his game or whoever else, like you don't even know what you're going to get. Like with Jameis last year, Njoku was incredible. Then Jameis came in, threw him, one of the games he threw him 5 targets and Njoku caught 1.
Yeah.
And it's like you feel like you get completely rug pulled by that situation. So it is a highly volatile situation.
Since we're talking about it right now, I got to ask you this. So the wide receiver position seems pretty efficient. Like when you just look at the rankings, the wide receiver rankings in like the top 30, top 40. I asked this to Daigle actually when I had him on Perspectives, and he just didn't have an answer. And it's fine. Like you don't have to have an answer, but like what wide receivers in that range do you actually feel bad about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get over the blind spot I have for rushing production, but I just any of those guys that like Xavier Worthy and Jamison Williams, I'm trying to get over it, but I just have a hard time with it. I will say this: there's a group of players, and people actually hate this answer, so I'm glad you asked, JJ, because I definitely want it. That first time on your show, I definitely want to get as many people off my side as possible.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Josh Downs right now.
Oh, let's do that. This is great. We haven't talked enough about it. Yeah, let's do it.
So there's a number of players. And again, I love Josh Downs as a player. I have a ton of them in Dynasty. I'm rooting for this guy, right? I have a lot of guys exactly like this because I've seen so many times this path, and it creates a discount that you can take advantage of. Guys that start as pure slot guys and then get a bigger role. CeeDee Lamb stuck behind, to some degree, behind Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper. He ran 94% of his routes from the slot as a rookie. Next thing you know, it's wheels up, right? Jackson Smith and Jigba. Chris Godwin stuck for a couple years and then became a full-time player, right? And in those situations, what we look for, the best way to find breakouts is look for these small sample size guys that look really good in the metrics. And when their role grows, everything grows, right? Like Mark Andrews, perfect example of a guy who, everything looked good on paper, got a bigger role, right? So we look for that. The problem with some of these guys, though, is the intention of the team to grow this role and expand the role. And you look at certain guys like Khalil Shakir,
Jaden Reed.
I know Jaden Reed, man. That's the one.
I didn't mean to cut you off. That's just like the easiest go-to.
And dude, he can. Well, the thing is, he converges on my like issue with guys that don't get a bigger role, and also guys that survive on carries, right? Because it's invisible. To me. You know what I mean? So like Jaden Reed is like. That you triggered me a little bit there with the Jaden Reed.
Sorry, talk about Khalil Shakir. I want to hear about it.
So Khalil Shakir, like you look at what he does, and like you look at where they utilize him, and he's just coming in for pure pass downs, playing the slot, oftentimes going up against nickel corners and linebackers, and that's obviously going to look incredible when you're looking at his separation score. You know what I mean? His targets per route run, because he's pretty much only coming in for pass plays, and he's getting looks, and the plays are designed for him, and yards per route run. That all looks great, but we don't have any indication that they have any interest in moving him to a full-time role. And what I mean by that is for 3 wide receiver sets, he plays slot, and then he stays on the field for 2 wide receiver sets and goes out wide and plays flanker. He's never going to play split end, but like you see it with Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, CeeDee Lamb, JSN, like it's the best role for fantasy, right? Cooper Kupp, the best all-time season. He ran the 4th most slot routes of any wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb also 4th most with the 3rd season there. So like that's kind of the modern cheat code. With these guys, you got to predict that to happen. And with a guy like Josh Downs, we actually saw last year that Michael Pittman missed a game. So it's Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce as the full-time guys. Josh Downs is kind of a part-time guy. Michael Pittman missed a game. They put Adonai Mitchell in that spot. They didn't elevate Downs. And then later Pierce missed a game, and they put Mitchell in that role. So Downs, if he doesn't get a role change just based on what they like, if they don't just change his snaps on their own, he's actually 2 injuries away from getting an elevation. And it just scares me, mainly because of how much I have of him in Dynasty. But like, I worry that his ADP is getting a little steamed up based on these metrics that might not translate to a full-time role. Like even if you actually put him out wide and now he's getting covered by like Christian Gonzalez and these guys, like, is he even going to be as efficient? So there's a lot of questions with those type players, and I can see both sides of it, but I need to have an inkling that there's going to be a change. Like, at least give me a JSN situation where I can say he'll leapfrog Lockett. Like, are the Colts going to make Alec Pierce a part-time guy this year? If anyone, I'm praying for a beat writer to come out and say, hey, they've been working Downs out wide, and they're going to have Pierce as that field stretcher that sporadically comes on. Boy, I'd love to hear that, because I would draft Downs everywhere. Right now, I'm a little scared.
I think that's 100. That's great analysis and is 100% valid. Like I felt the same way. I've had people come to me. I don't know if you've heard this, but the people wanting Josh Downs to play the Wan'Dale Robinson role, and like if Daniel, which that's not how this works. But like,
Right.
if Daniel Jones coming over to Indy, let's say Daniel Jones gets a start, and they're like, well, what if Josh Downs plays the Wan'Dale Robinson role? And I'm like, I don't want him to play the Wan'Dale Robinson.
Does play the Wan'Dale Robinson role.
Yeah,
It's a terrible role.
Like I don't want some low A dot like Mickey Mouse type stuff to a great route runner who we have high hopes for as an individual talent. Whereas Wan'Dale Robinson, I liked him as a prospect enough, but like, he's a super undersized dude who is more of that tweener than he is like this pure, great, like, I think Rich Rebar has made the comparison of like, what if Josh Downs, and not to say this is like there's even a 50% outcome of this, but like give him a 10% outcome or 5% outcome. What if he's like the next Antonio Brown, right? Where like, right.
That's what I think is
exactly
possible if they give him that role. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Make him Godwin, and then Pittman can be Mike Evans, right?
Right.
That's
so like the talent, that's to say that like the talent for Downs is evident. And so my stance is I at least don't want to be super below market when the talent level is there. But at the same time, the situation is garbage. Like when it comes to like, the problem is that if it were only Michael Pittman and then some random flanker that they had that we didn't really care much about, but like AD Mitchell was actually good in some like open rate metrics and stuff like that last year. And, I wasn't like in love with him as a prospect, but I don't think they're just going to give up on him, in year two, after he at least showed something. And he had some really, we've seen the highlights of when Anthony Richardson was starting and like AD Mitchell's wide open and he's just not hitting them. And then, Alec Pierce was really efficient last year in that role, So it's like, do they like what would be the purpose of moving him? And then you add Tyler Warren to the mix this year, right. And then now there's more coach speak about Anthony Richardson being healthy and maybe he actually, might have a chance to be all that stuff. It brings a lot of volatility to that situation. And so I don't think that's irrelevant when, Josh Downs might be drafted next to like an Emeka Egbuka where there's like immense upside if this Godwin stuff goes south, right? Like that's where to me it's scary if he drops that tier. Like if you're drafting Josh Downs versus a Jaden Higgins or Trey Harris, I think it's a little bit different. But if you're, and like I can still make the argument for the rookies, but like in season long that is, right? But like Downs gets pushed in some drafts, like quite a bit, and that's where it's a little bit scary for sure.
Yeah, Downs definitely one of those guys that I will draft, especially in best ball. I kind of keep 3 lists. Guys I'm willing to reach a little bit for. I don't do much reaching in best ball though, because I don't like bleeding that value. But
yeah, right.
Then there's guys where if they slide a little bit, I'm taking them. And then even the guys that I flat out hate, if they fall more than if I'm sitting here on like 20 picks of ADP value, I say, okay, you know what I mean? You look at the guy that won Best Ball Mania last year and it's like, people just didn't like drafting James Conner and Adam Thielen.
Right.
And he got like generational value on those players, so it's like at a certain point you got to be like, okay, but so Downs is one of those guys that I'm willing to take for sure. But I do worry. I worry about these guys. And again, that's such a huge, it goes back to the tight end conversation where it's like in Dynasty, focus on talent, focus on what we know, focus on the historical hit rates, focus on, JJ's prospect guide, like focus on that and just get as many of those guys as you can. And then wait and hope that things open up. In redraft, we can't wait. We need to find that convergence now.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I love Downs too as a prospect. So like there's a lot of backbone to him being just like a good player, and you want to invest in that. You don't want to, my general stance, like I said, is that I don't want to be left behind even in season long, with a player that I believe is that talented. But when the situation is what it is with Downs right now, I also don't want to be overweight with that kind of player. I'm just trying to stay level.
It feels the worst when you're like, oh, I like that guy. And then it's like, why didn't I take him? Well, because I talked myself out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Because of the situation or something. Yeah.
That is where it's like, it is a tough game, it's a tough balancing act, but you got to find as many people that you feel exactly right about as possible, right? The trifecta of like, man, I love everything going on here. I love this player. I love this situation. I love everything.
Yeah. All right. So we have these suspensions I want to just touch on really quick. These looming suspensions. Quinshon Judkins, we know the least about right now. He doesn't even have a contract, so he's technically not even like a Cleveland Brown. So it's really weird. And then you get Rashee Rice, who sounds like it's going to happen now that he pled guilty. Jordan Addison, it sounds like something's going to happen there. We don't have to go player by player or anything here, But like in a season long league, so let's not talk about best ball where we know like the money is towards the end of the year. And obviously the money is still towards the end of the year in season long, but there is a churn with bench. And there's not as many spots in your roster and stuff. And so I think it's a bigger question in season long than it is arguably in best ball. Where also in best ball, like you're going to get filler players when those guys are out with just guys who perform well that you might have never predicted to do well in a season long league. So how are you approaching guys like Rice and Addison in a season long league? Are they the kinds of guys that you're like, I'll take the discount, or are they the kind of guys that you just kind of ignore and yes, they might have good value at the end of the season, but I'll let someone else deal with that early season headache?
Yeah, I'm with you on compounding uncertainties, right? Like I consume a lot of your content. It's like if you're gonna the more risk you take on, the more reward you need to have.
Right.
And with some of these players, like I'll say Rashee Rice, we don't know the suspension, right? But what we do know is that this guy is a stud, right? And he tricked all of our algorithms by them completely changing how he's used from college to now. Like that's how they got us, right? But like his role is great. I mean, the second most targets of any player when he got hurt. I know people say it's a small sample size of 3 games, but in the season prior to that, he was also very good.
That's true.
Right? Like at the end, like if you take the sample size of the end of the season, the next. So a guy like that, I actually am more willing to take a risk on, depending on how many games. If he's going to miss half the season, I can't do it. But I am more willing to take that risk because I think he can come right back in and immediately take over. And the risk to me, of course, because if he's coming back healthy off his injury, the risk to me is worth it. With some of these other guys, like Addison to me is a good example where it's not just this idea of like, I'm waiting for this guy to be back and then it's house money, right? Like picture Justin Jefferson with Kirk Cousins. If he were suspended for 3 games, we would all be drafting him. It wouldn't matter. We would just draft him because we know when he gets back, it's Hucket Chucket football. It's Justin Jefferson. It's awesome. In this case, we've got a situation where it's a new quarterback, a quarterback I like, but we still don't know. I've never seen him. He could come out and be, Patrick Mahomes, where he sits 1 year and the first year he throws 50 touchdown passes, or he could come out and be like a lot of first-time quarterbacks and be just fine. You know, not to mention we don't know who the second target is. Like could be TJ Hawkinson, could be Addison. So now you're sitting here and you're taking zeros for X number of weeks, and when he comes back, you put him right in your lineup, and then he doesn't perform, and you get smoked again for a 4th week, and now you got to go find somebody else. It's like situations like that. I don't like betting. I don't like taking zeros unless I know I'm in the money. And with some of these guys, like Quinshon Judkins is like he was
hard to draft before all of this, in my opinion.
Hard to draft before. He was going back to back with Caleb Johnson. Right. I'm looking at the Browns and I'm looking at the Arthur Smith and the Steelers, and I couldn't really pull that trigger. I do have some exposure to him, but I think I have enough exposure where I'm just gonna keep what I got.
Just let it go. Yeah,
just check in and make sure that number is getting smaller and smaller as we go along. But like so for me, I need to know that I'm the risk is going to be worth the reward, and with some of these guys, I really don't see it. Same with a guy like Brandon Ayuk. Like I don't find myself going there unless I can get it at like the craziest discount where I know I have a ton of bench spots. Then I'm like, okay, but like if I don't truly believe in the player, like if you go back and to the years where like Tom Brady was suspended or Zeke Elliott, of course, I'll wait for Zeke, no problem. When he was awesome, but Jordan Addison, I don't know. I'm gonna wait for that.
I feel like Addison is almost like the Mendoza line too. Like he's like I could see someone wanting, like if you like Addison a lot, like I could see someone making the opposite argument, right? Like I think that he's a really good like kind of litmus or like line to draw in the sand of like a player better than this or worse than this is kind of the direction you would go. If you want to hold on to that value or not hold on to that as they serve that suspension.
That's a good point, right? Because like Addison does have those games, like 3 touchdowns. He's got these like crazy, and that's why best ball. I'm glad you eliminated best ball from the discussion because something like that where Addison, like look at T Higgins. You had to have T Higgins if you wanted big money last year because he scored 3 touchdowns the week it mattered. So like a guy like Addison, of course, could do that. But in season long, I don't know. We'll see what the suspension is.
I think it's fair. I think those are all fair points. And I think obviously the suspension will matter. I think most are assuming 3 games at this point. What do you think with Rice? If you were to just throw a number out there, how long do you think it's going to be?
I'm thinking 6.
I'm thinking 6 as
I
well.
wonder if they'll pull back remember that old trick they used to pull where they would come out and make a big deal that a guy's getting 6 games and then on a random Friday over the summer they just quietly reduce it to like 4.
Appeal it or whatever. Yeah, they'll do it. Yeah.
That trick used to, I mean, that was a great trick back in the day because it's like, hey, we're punishing this guy, you know.
PR perspective, yeah.
Hey, from VR perspective, it was like, yeah, he got 6 games, but then they quietly put it to the number that they want. I wonder if maybe they'll bring that old trick back. I always like that trick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, Drew Davenport, for instance, does a lot of great work with the legal side of football and fantasy football. So take a look at what he's doing. We're not lawyers, so we don't know for sure. Yeah. We're just having fun with it.
And this one feels a little different because people got hurt, you know. That's why.
It's also like, I don't know how you feel about it. I always just feel kind of dirty talking about some of this stuff. Like it's like the Quinshon Judkins stuff. Like I don't want to freaking talk about what is being accused here. It's horrible, you know.
It's awful, man. And again, the worst format for it is Dynasty. Because you think of the way some of these like careers ended for some of these people. Yeah. And I don't want to get into the point where I'm like, you know, trying to figure out if this guy's like partying too much or drinking too much. Yeah, going to behave
a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is a part of the game that I don't love. So let's get back into spreadsheets.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. Before I let you go, Coop, give me some of your favorite targets this year in season long leagues.
Yeah. So by default with the Josh Downs situation, if you are you're looking at the way I am drafting a good amount of Michael Pittman at wide receiver 50. I mean, this is a guy that got back-to-back 140, 150 targets. Last year led the team in targets with a broken back. Backs are tricky, but you know, from what I understand, it's a bone. It's not a disc or a muscle or anything like that. So hopefully he can get healthy. We watched this guy be wide receiver 13 with Gardner Minshew throwing under 200 yards a game. So real possibility that he returns good value there. One guy I really like a lot. I posted a article. I rarely do this, but I posted a thread just kind of breaking down my article with some, because I had some good videos. So I was like, you know what, let's use the videos on the old social media machine. But Kenneth Walker is a guy that
love it.
Yes, dude, awesome, man. I mean, that scheme is so damn friendly. Like just the personnel bringing in. You seen this fullback Robbie Oots they brought in?
Yeah.
Oots, he's a big 70 pounds. AJ Barner, great blocking tight end. They drafted Gray Zabel, who apparently in my research, this guy did the tied for 3rd highest vertical leap for a lineman ever. Like he'll be perfect as a pulling guard. Because what Kubiak does is he runs this zone that's just like devastating with the fullbacks and the linemen. And the moment you stack the line with 6 guys, you know, a guy in each gap, he runs a gap concept and he pulls a guard or he pulls a tackle or he does like a wham block and it's so easy to rip off chunk plays in that scheme. So I got a whole article. If you go just type in Fantasy Alarm, Kenneth Walker player profile, it should come right up on Google and that's free. And I turned all the videos into GIFs for everybody. So there's something to watch too while you read it.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
It's hard to get people to read these. JJ, I still remember something you said like 4 or 5 years ago where people were like, it was originally when people came out and were like, everything's moving to video and no one reads anymore. And you were like, well, I'm still going to write because everything I say on the video and everything I do on the shows and everything I do as a guest, that all stems from the research I do and the writing that I do for the guides and the emails. So I'm still going to do that. And that's always been, I'm a writer first and foremost. So I remember that you said that. The 3 things I remember you saying was that. Another thing you said that I definitely remember is to try to separate your audience for, you know, if possible, get them somewhere where you can deliver the work to them directly. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and then the third thing that I always remember that you say is to never tweet.
Yeah. Never tweet.
Never tweet.
You should never tweet. And I broke that rule this week. And I need to not break that rule ever again. Yeah. I appreciate that, man. I think with writing, like, it's definitely like, you know, obviously I focus so much on the podcast. We're doing so much more YouTube and video stuff. And it's really, really important to do all that stuff from just like a business standpoint and how people consume things. But I think if you want to just like be a good analyst, like, I'm not saying this to you, I'm just saying this to the audience, obviously. But like if anyone out there is just like trying to be a good analyst, I think that writing is so impactful because it allows you to understand how to formulate arguments better, right? You can't always get that in just a conversation. Plenty of you guys have listened to podcasts before where you can tell if someone's prepared or not. And usually the people who are prepared are the ones who have written stuff. who have done the research, obviously, and they put the thoughts to paper, and they can articulate those thoughts a lot more easily because they put it to paper. And so I do think that even if you're not publishing the thing, just kind of putting it down and kind of thinking about it from an argument perspective, it's helpful, man. It's really helpful.
Right. And you can go back and read it. I'll go back. I write, like 50,000 words on tight ends. I'll go back and pull up my article before I do a show and say, hey, where are those numbers that I put down? Where are those thoughts that I had? And I pull it all up and it's ready to go. It's like, you're teaching yourself and you're learning through the process of research and writing. And then it's just so much easier because we're doing hours and hours and hours of this stuff. If I were to sit down and research for every individual show, I'd be doing hours and hours of research for every show.
Exactly.
If I just do the research and then turn that content into a tweet, turn it into a video, turn it into whatever, now I'm compounding my efforts. So I would encourage people out there to start there. Start with Reddit because they'll tell you what you're doing right and doing wrong.
Comes full circle. Always goes back to Reddit. Coop, man, it was great to chop it up. I'm so glad you were able to finally hop on Perspectives. Let everyone know where they can find you, what you're working on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you follow me on Twitter at Coop A Fiasco or on Reddit at Coop, there it is. I always share everything I do that's free. So everything I write on Fantasy Alarm, the YouTubes, that's all out there. If you want our paywall stuff, then get a copy of our draft guide now at Fantasy Alarm or on SiriusXM. If you have a subscription to that, our show is 6 to 8 p.m. weekdays on channel 87. And we're just talking ball all the time. Me, Howard Bender, Jim Bowden. It's good stuff. So really appreciate you having me on, man. And I appreciate getting a chance to talk to your audience because I know that's a lot of sharp folks.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate it. And they'll appreciate hearing that for sure. You can find all my stuff over on lateround.com. Follow me on Twitter on Bluesky at lateroundqb. Make sure you are checking out the late round draft guide when you're on lateround.com. That is for sale right now. It's updated weekly. If you're listening to this on Friday, when this podcast goes out, there is an update with that draft guide that has gone out, as will be the case every Friday. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great weekend. As always, thanks for tuning in.